What's poppin', guys? We're gonna bring a video. I'm doing what I call 2 scary Discord horror story. Anyway, smash like button, subscribe, skip on YouTube. There's something horror.
My son used to be very active on something called Discord.
This one's a little bad.
From what I understand, is a messaging app for people who play video games. It allowed him to talk to people from all over the world that play the same games as him. So at some point, he broke the news to us that he'd been talking to a girl over in the UK named Lori. She and he had become friends, playing some sort of pirate game, playing together most days and talking pretty much all the time when they weren't at their computers. And eventually, he just up and asked her if she wanted to be his girlfriend, and she says yes. It was definitely a new concept for someone like me who grew up at a time when cell phones weren't even a thing. But I understand that we live in the digital age where new methods of dating are coming to the fore, so I just tried to be happy for him, as any mom should when their kid gets their first girlfriend or boyfriend. Plus, with an entire ocean between them, it's not like I have to worry about them getting accidentally pregnant or something. However, one Sunday afternoon, my son emerges from his boy cave for what seemed like the first time in days. Walks into the TV room where me and my husband are sat, and with a very concerned look on his face. We asked him what the matter was, and he just kind of shrugs, tells us everything is cool, and then just kind of wanders out again. So as you can imagine, me and my husband give each other a look as if to be like, what was that about? My husband gets up, follows our son into the living room before gently prodding him about anything that might be bothering him. From what he told me, our kid was just doing that typical boyish thing of pretending that everything was fine, but in a way that tells us that he's obviously upset about something. My husband then told me he asked after Lori, with our son responding in almost a visceral way of like, why are you always my business, blah blah blah. He'd obviously touched on a sore subject, so our general conclusion was that he and Lori had broken up, and he just didn't want to talk about it. We weren't about to press him on it, so we kind of just left him to it to get over and move on to someone new. But over the next month or so, our son seemed to get increasingly depressed. He'd spend more time up in his room, only ever coming out to go to school or eat dinner, and then just retreating back to his little boy cave. Like I said, we figured this was because he'd split up with his internet girlfriend, but one time my husband was walking past his room and blatantly heard him talking to someone via his little voice chat Discord thing, addressing them as babe and at one point Lori. So apparently they're still talking at that point, but we still assume that they were having relationship issues, putting it down to the fact that they were like thousands of miles apart. I know long-distance relationships don't work at the best of times, even when people were just a few states away from each other, but these kids had an entire ocean separating them, so God knows how hard that must have been on them. Only as we came to learn, that wasn't exactly the problem. It was something much, much darker. So as I said, our son seemed to be getting more and more depressed over the course of the month, and it got so bad that at one point that me and my husband discussed getting him a therapist or something to nip the problem in the bud before it could morph into something less easy to deal with. But suddenly, out of apparently nowhere, he just perks up. One day he's looking better, feeling perkier, and is considerably more talkative. He actually seemed keener on spending more time with us too, which for a 16-year-old boy struck us as very unusual. I mean, not that we were complaining. It was nice seeing him feeling better about things, and we put it down to him meeting a new girl or just shutting out Lori from his life. This kind of sunny behavior carries on for like a week or so until one Saturday, when after coming down for breakfast, we don't see or hear from him for the rest of the day. Late in the afternoon, my husband goes up into his room, knocks on the door, and asks our son if everything is okay. He comes back down into the TV room, tells me there was no reply after knocking, and asked me if I had seen him in the house at all during the day. I tell him no, that if he had gone over to a friend's house or whatever, that he certainly had let me know. And then my husband just kind of shrugs, tells me he has a headache, then walks off to the downstairs bathroom to get an aspirin from the medicine. It's a factor. Next thing I know, I can hear him springing down the hallway and up the stairs, his feet like boom, boom, boom as he rushed up to our son's room. I'm super confused, like, what's going on? Before walking out into the hallway, first
pills?
aid kit style
Or
thing.
pills?
We kept that thing stuffed to the gills. And there it was, lying on the bathroom floor.
He
It was
overdosed.
completely empty. Then, like my husband before me, it hit me what had happened. So I sprint up to my son's room where I find my husband leaning over our boy's bed, shaking him like, wake up.
Damn, he
Can you hear me?
overdosed.
Wake up.
So I killed
There's a
him.
whole puke sitting on the bed next to his head, and he's completely unconscious. And there are empty pill trays lying on the floor nearby.
Damn.
As soon as I walk in, my husband runs back downstairs to call 911, and I take over the shaking, the wailing, begging him to open his eyes. Now, the only light in the room was coming from his computer monitor, so at one point I look over to it and see one of the most haunting things I've ever seen in my life. On the screen is a webcam window from the Discord thing I mentioned, and it displays the body of a young girl that's just kind of dangling in midair. It took me a second to realize what I was looking at, but when I did, I almost screamed the house down. She was hanging from something.
Holy shit.
I tried not to look. I
What
really
the
did.
fuck? Is he?
I just tried to focus on my boy as his dad ran back upstairs with emergency
That's awesome.
services on his cell. I should have told him not to look. I was just distraught. I could barely speak as he walks back into the room and starts describing our son's condition to the dispatcher on the other end of the line. He's
Jesus.
frantically talking away when he does pretty much the same thing as me. Turns around to see the webcam window open and the girl's body hanging on the
That
screen.
is sick.
He just froze and stops talking, long enough for me to be able to hear the dispatcher say, "Sir, are you there, sir?" At which point he snaps out of his daze and carries on talking to the person on the other end. It was he that then had the same presence of mind to turn off the computer, all the while giving the EMTs our home address and begging them to arrive as quickly as possible. Our son was taken to the hospital where he promptly
Oh,
has his
amazing.
stomach pumped. We stayed all night, waiting in the visitors area, and when a doctor finally approached us with an update on our son's condition, I found my heart racing as I prepared for the worst. But thankfully, we got him to the hospital just in time.
That's good.
He survived, barely,
What the fuck
but the
was that,
same
man?
couldn't be said for the girl on the computer screen.
That is some crazy
I assumed
shit.
it was this Bowie girl he'd been in a long-distance relationship with.
He killed himself.
When our son woke up and saw us in the hospital room, he burst into tears. He apologized over and over again, and we all just cried it out together. He then proceeded to spill his guts to us about what had happened, and I honestly couldn't believe my ears. It turned out that they formed a kind of pact together just the week before, right around the same time he seemed to have perked up and gotten out of the funk he was in. Apparently, that was what did it. That she and he had figured out a way to escape the pain they were suffering, and that the revelation had been some kind of boost to him, as morbidly insane as that sounds. We went ahead with booking him into therapy, and he's doing much,
And she
much
killed
better
herself.
now. We don't monitor his online activities as he figured he'd just find a way to subvert us, but we definitely don't allow him to have a computer in his bedroom anymore. And since then, me and my husband have made an effort to acquaint ourselves with the darker corners of the internet. And believe me, there are some days I wish I hadn't. Because my God, there's some horrendous things out there. Things I wish I'd never seen, and that I'll never be able to get out of.
GNC has all of those flavors of open.
That was, wow. So that girl had to kill herself. Wow. Okay, that was the most interesting video I ever saw. If you guys enjoyed that video, smash like button, subscribe. With that being said, see you guys in the next one. Have a great